Welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's episode, second half league winners for this season. We just did a must add. We're going to be looking at second half league losers tomorrow in the next episode. But right now we're looking at four guys actually that you'll be able to pick up, maybe trade for, that will really help you win, obviously, in the second half of this season. But before we get into that, want to talk to you guys about BetMGM Sportsbook, one of the best NHL sportsbooks out there right now, especially with their same game parlay features. It's great if you're looking to bet shots on goal props as well. If you sign up with promo code OwnersBox, you get first bet insurance up to $1,000. So it's definitely worth it if you're looking for a new sportsbook to make some NHL bets. But let's get right into it. So the first guy that we're going to be looking at as our second half league winner is Brady Tkachuk. And I think it's very possible that he has. It's not saying that he wasn't a first league half winner, but Brady Tkachuk, 40 points in 40 games so far this season, and really intense shot volume as well. One of the few players you'll actually see who's listed his shot prop over under at 4.5 consistently. There's like 1 to maybe 6 guys that have that throughout the season, him being one of them. So for one, that's really good and really valuable because if you don't have a lot of shots, obviously harder to score. But looking at the first half of this guy's season, he had the second highest expected goals for at 24.5, only behind Zach Hyman in the NHL. So that's higher than guys like Timo Meier, Austin Matthews. So he's creating a ton of offensive chances on his own too. He only has 14 goals though, so there's a level of puck luck there for sure. But also I think you can maybe chalk it up to less skill. Some people are saying that. I don't think this guy is someone you can worry about finishing. Like, I think he'll be able to get there at some point. And I think it's going to come in the second half of the season. This Sens offense, will continue to show up. They have the same problem, though, as Tkachuk does right now. Looking at their expected goals for and their actual goals, they're 6th in the NHL right now, expected goals for at 2.8, but their average so far this season is just over 2, which is 4th worst in the NHL right now. So they're just not executing, but I think in the second half of the season, this is a fairly new group. I think they've gotten definitely closer together here, especially later on in the season. I think they'll be much better. Brady Tkachuk scored 30 goals last year. I don't think it's crazy to think that he can't score 30 to 35 this season. Right now, he's top 50 in fantasy hockey, but I definitely think there's reason to believe that he can finish in the top 25 by the end of the season, which would be a really big second half, obviously, right now at 50. His shooting percentage this year is 8. Last year, we saw it at around 10%. I think there's more than enough reason to believe that he can get that up to maybe even 10 and even higher to 11%, where a lot of these elite goal scorers lie. And even looking at their division, there's some really poor defensive teams too. You're looking at the Canadiens, one of the worst defensive teams in the NHL, have the most defensive zone giveaways so far this season, and they still have to play them 3 times. And then you have the Panthers, Red Wings, and Sabres, who are all in the bottom 14 in NHL in the goals against per game this season in that stat category. So Brady Tkachuk, definitely got to keep it on your radar, definitely a guy you should try to get for the second half of your season. All right, so another guy you should be targeting for the second portion of this season is Anders Lee on the New York Islanders. He's an interesting case, but this Islanders offense continues to create a lot of scoring chances game in and game out, to everyone's surprise, or maybe it's just my surprise, just looking at this roster and this team, especially with Barry Trotz leaving. I didn't think they were going to be as good offensively, but we've seen guys like Anders Lee and Brock Nelson really pick it up. And so Anders Lee, 5th in the NHL in high danger chances for at the halfway point of the season. So that's more than Austin Matthews, Matt Tkachuk, Timo Meier, and many other players. Now, you could say that these better players don't necessarily need to create these high danger chances to score, aka why we don't see McDavid anywhere near the top 25 in this category. He's actually just outside of it. But for maybe less skilled guys who are, I would say, Anders Lee, he's obviously not as skilled as a guy like a McDavid or Austin Matthews. Creating chances in front of the net is super important. Needs to grind a little bit more for his opportunities. So I think that's really important for a guy like Lee, and I think we're going to see a bubble burst here at some point. He has 14 goals and 15 assists for 29 points so far this season, and maybe doesn't shoot the puck as much as someone like Brady Tkachuk. He still has 117 shots, and his expected goals for is just under 20 right now. So with his high danger chances where they are and his expected goals mark, I think there's definitely a reason to believe we could see some positive regression for the rest of the season, especially as I mentioned with the direction that the Islanders offense is heading at this point. They're averaging just under 3 goals per game over the last month, which is top 10 in the NHL, so that's very impressive. They're continuing to create solid offense, and Anders Lee is responsible for a lot of it. And then with a really solid netminder behind you too, you have to remember that definitely gives the offense a little bit more motivation to play even harder, if this guy's saving you game in and game out. So I'd look at trading a guy maybe like Cole Caulfield right now, as much as it pains me to say it. I don't think Montreal is going to be trending in the right direction in the second half of the season. So right now he has 23 goals. He's 75th in fantasy hockey scoring, according to Yahoo standard scoring right now. So Anders Lee's 90th, so maybe there's a little bit of sell high portion there on Cole Caulfield. And then Jamie Benn also, I think, has exceeded expectations so far this year, a guy that you should definitely be selling high on if he's on your team before the second half of the season, and Anders Lee could be a guy you could pick up. All right, the third guy you're going to want to look to add for the second half of the season is Mark Stone. Right now, he's the 52nd ranked fantasy hockey player in Yahoo scoring. I think there's a lot to like about Mark Stone, and forever he's been this great player on the ice that everyone's loved to watch and great two-way center, but it's never really translated in terms of fantasy hockey. But this season, I think he's making myself and all fantasy hockey owners change their mind for sure. He's 38 points in 42 games, which is great, but look at what he's doing recently, especially on a Vegas offense that was kind of reeling for a bit. They weren't playing very well. They had a lot of injuries. Guys were in and out of the lineup. Mark Stone was continuing to carry his piece of the pie there. I mean, if you look at more recently, their offense only started to get going 3-4 games ago. But looking at his last 15 games, he has 8 goals, 17 points, so over a point per game. Not to mention he has the 4th highest individual expected goals rate over that span in the NHL. Eichel's back recently, last 2 games from a long stint on the shelf, but that doesn't really seem to affect his production. He was on a line with Stone before. Eichel was, along with Stevenson, but now with him out, this Michael Amadio, Chandler Stevenson, and Mark Stone line has been a huge bright spot for this Vegas offense. Have one of the highest goals percentage on this Vegas team amongst all their different forward lines, and in expected goals for per 60, they're around 3.25, which is top of all their Vegas lines as well. His shooting percentage right now, Mark Stone, is very high, but I think this might be the season we finally see Mark Stone have more goals than assists. I mean, if he stays on this line, compared to Amadio and Stevenson, he's really the only number one scoring option, and I think this Vegas offense will continue to trend in the right direction. Looking at a similar reason to why we did like Brady Tkachuk, you look at this Pacific Division, there's a lot of bad defensive teams there. You have the Canucks, the Ducks, the Sharks, and even the Oilers too, obviously not very talented on the defensive side. So I think this is Mark Stone chat for the rest of the season could really be someone you can add on your roster. All right, so the last league winner that you should secure, a defenseman, Justin Faulk, who's right now the 24th ranked defenseman in terms of fantasy hockey, Yahoo scoring. I think this guy could definitely finish inside the top 15 amongst defensemen by the end of the season. For one, the opportunity is definitely there right now. It's unfortunate for the Blues, but this team is just loaded with injuries. Krug, Scandella, and Perinovic, all defensemen, all on LTIR right now. Bertuzzo and Leddy are both hurt as well. And even Tarasenko is on IR until the end of January probably. So now you have a guy who's always been an offensive defenseman throughout his career to quarterback and kind of carry the momentum of this offense on this Blues team, especially from a defense standpoint as well. And looking at his expected offensive stats, I think you could definitely see a bubble bursting here, as we talked about earlier with someone else. This season he's 7th amongst defensemen in expected goals for. Even 10th in individual scoring chances created as well. So the offense is there. We haven't really seen this Blues team execute a full offensive game plan for 60 minutes, and I think that's one of the reasons why his numbers are a little bit lower than what his expected numbers suggest. I think that'll definitely change in the second half of the season too. This Blues offense has started to play much better. They're averaging 3 goals per game over the last 10, which is a top 10 offense in the NHL this season. And then in bangers leagues, he becomes even more useful with 79 hits. I talked about the fact that he's 7th in expected goals for. You look at other guys who are in that top 10. You have Cale Makar, Roman Josi, Brandon Montour. Those guys have 30 to 50 hits right now. So Faulk definitely has a huge advantage in that category if that is something that you're playing with. And then this guy's a utility player for the Blues. He does it all. He does have a ton of block shots as well. And then looking at it in terms of a really bad defensive lead too for the Blues, he's only -4. So I think in the second half of the season, when this offense does get a little bit better, that number will just continue to improve. And right now, guys like Philip Hronek, Adam Larson, even Tyson Barrie are ahead of Justin Faulk in fantasy scoring. I think those are potential guys that maybe you could trade off for Justin Faulk if you're able to, but I would be paying a pretty hefty price for Justin Faulk for the rest of the season. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you are looking to sign up for BetMGM, the links will be in the description below. Thank you guys for watching the second half league winners. Next video will be second half league losers, and I'll see you guys next time.